Good evening and welcome to the March 26, 2024 Lower Frederick Township Board of Supervisors work session. Wow, that's amazing. That's microphone, okay. Let's all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So I'm assuming everyone can hear me, because I think probably people all the way in, the borough can hear me. Township meetings are recorded for the purpose of preparing the minutes, and the recording is destroyed after the minutes are approved. The meeting will be posted online on the Township YouTube channel. The link can be found on the Board of Supervisors page on the Township website. It is requested that all persons wishing to speak before the board shall state their name, address, and the subject matter upon which they wish to speak for the record. In the interest of facilitating the business of the board, all persons addressing the board shall be limited to 3 minutes unless such time is extended by the chair for good cause. Individuals are requested to remain in their seats and to respect when other persons are speaking. The Board of Supervisors will provide a reasonable opportunity for citizens to comment on any non-agenda items after all agenda items have been addressed, but prior to the adjournment of the public meeting. All right, first item on the agenda is the Zieglerville Road authorization to proceed on the stormwater project.
Can I ask just one quick question? Can you just have somebody confirm that the audio is acceptable on Zoom? Maybe Pam?
We can hear you.
Perfect, thank you. That's been an issue that I hear about. I know, but I don't know what gets into the computer.
So for the stormwater project on Zieglerville Road, all easements have been secured, and we are ready to proceed at this time under the equipment bid. The township will purchase the necessary materials. The township will work directly with, it was Beers for tree removal, who they worked with on other projects. And the actual labor and equipment will be done under the equipment bid. Total estimated project costs are not expected to exceed $70,000. And there is a proposed motion before the board tonight to authorize that work to proceed.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the board?
I'm just reiterating, you said that you expect the total cost to be 70,000?
Not to exceed 70,000,
Okay,
correct?
thanks.
I see a hand.
Hi, it's Diane Jurin, 9 Zieglerville Road. Just wondering, Carol, will there be any kind of vegetation replaced there to help the water not just run off, soak through the swale? And also because the trees are going to be gone, so those two neighbors have had sort of a hedge there that will be gone. Will there be any vegetation replaced?
So yes, Diane, thank you for asking. There are a number of trees in that road today. A large number of those trees are, well, not alive. And we will be removing those trees, of course, to complete this project. But part of the project is installation of replacement trees, both deciduous and evergreen trees that are marked on the plan, to help restore that vegetative buffer on the property line. The swale itself is going to be lined with a erosion-resistant matting that grass can grow through. So the swale itself will also be a vegetated swale. So we're really looking forward to the project and thankful for the cooperation of the property owners towards this, accomplishing this goal.
Thank you. That's really awesome. Thanks for having it all under control.
If there are no other questions, is the board ready to make a motion?
Also move.
Well, we need to, somebody state the motion, I guess.
Okay. I authorize to proceed with the Zieglerville Road Drainage Project with a cost not to exceed $70,000 for construction expenses, and further authorize the township manager to sign any paperwork necessary to complete the project.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Chuck Geiser will second.
Supervisor Halter made the motion, Supervisor Yiser made the second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. All right, next item is the paving, the Zieglerville Road base repair authorization to advertise bid.
I guess I'll take that one again. This is the engineer, Carol Schuler. So Zieglerville Road, as I mentioned at our last meeting, I did walk Zieglerville Road along with employees from the Public Works Department. We marked out areas that require base repair. It was a substantial area that requires base repair, much like that chart I love to show on road conditions and costs. Once the road condition starts to go downhill, it goes downhill rapidly. So we had roughly 40% of the roadway travel lanes require base repair. Because of that result, we did do some investigation. We had some core samples taken by a company that does something called cold-in-place recycling to evaluate whether or not that would be the better option for repairing this road. They did find 3 to 4 inches of asphalt on top of 2A stone base. It was, for that reason, a good candidate for recycling. But as we evaluated the costs and the benefits, pluses and minuses of road recycling versus road base repair, we're ultimately landing on road base repair. Road recycling would result in an increased height of road. We'd have to adjust all of our utilities to meet that, and we would have to work with curb lines and millings and additional cross-section to offset that increase. That was the first concern. Another concern is that when you do road recycling, you've got to leave that recycled base in place to cure for a minimum of a week, usually a few weeks. And given the kind of traffic we have on Zieglerville Road, we were really concerned that that would be problematic. And last but not least, if we did road recycling, we would need to put the wearing course on the same year that we did the road recycling. We don't want to leave that surface for a full year. That's contradictory to our overall road planning and budgeting, which was to do base repair this year on Zieglerville Road and then wearing course application next year. So for this litany of reasons, we are recommending proceeding with standard base repair on Zieglerville Road, and we're requesting today consideration of authorizing that to be put, as that project to be assembled as a bid project to put out for bid.
So just to clarify, this is going to be in 2 phases.
Correct.
And when would you expect phase 1 to begin?
So if we put together a project for recycling this month and award it, so we're in March and put it out in April, we award it in at the earliest May, so we're really looking at a June project at this point, I would think.
And then the same for next year for phase 2?
Hopefully next year we get a little earlier a start, because we generally find paving prices are better the earlier we bid.
Thank you.
Questions? Yes, no? Yeah, this is Chuck Geiser. So I see in the memo, there's an estimated cost, right, for the total?
Correct.
$439,000 approximately, and then estimating that this year the cost would be $264, and then the balance would be the following year, right?
Correct, yes. And in fairness, those were really numbers for comparison. They're based on current bid prices.
Yep.
And they don't necessarily capture all the nuances. There's some additional traffic control and such, but it gives you a pretty good idea of where we're headed cost-wise, yes, sir.
And then there's also in the memo, I guess it's from Jason, that we budgeted $150,000 in liquid fuels for this year, for this project?
Yes.
Okay.
Have we allocated any money out of either ARPA or a capital improvement plan for this project?
This one was solely out of liquid fuels, so what I was anticipating, once the bids come back, we see what the cost is, and then see if the board's interested, and, you know, we're obviously, if it's over 150,000, we're gonna have to find an alternate kind of bucket to pull that from. I think ARPA COVID fund would be one of those areas, but I figured we would address that at that time.
But I mean, the estimate is, for this year is 264. So it would be, we're anticipating to be over 150, or am I not understanding something?
You're correct, Chuck.
So we're looking at a difference of about $114,000 between what it's going to cost and what we have in liquid fuels.
Yes.
Okay. And ARPA is a potential bucket that we could pull from?
You could pull more, you could pull from ARPA, we could pull more from liquid fuels. I mean, there's a couple of different, you know, the general fund is an option. So I didn't want to be presumptuous in where we might do that until we actually get real amounts back.
So we're just here tonight to move forward with putting out the bids.
Yes.
Carol, do you know how long that'll take to come in?
I'm sorry, was that?
How long that'll take to come in the bids?
So I can usually get bid documents together for you in 2 to 3 weeks, and then we'd come back for authorization to advertise, unless Jason was anticipating that tonight. You know, come back for authorization to advertise, likely in next workshop meeting, and then we can go out for bid from there. And that's about a 4-week process.
Okay.
So again, just to clarify, what are we looking for today? Because it sounds like we're not ready to authorize the bid advertisement.
Right, today we're asking authorization for me to assemble the bid package.
Thank you.
I apologize, that was my miscommunication.
Okay, any more questions from the board?
The motion, if you want.
Oh, go ahead, Bob.
All right, so quite a few questions. Thanks, Carol. I'm sure you were talking about E.J. Brenneman was the one for the
No.
No? Okay. But you figured that cost is too high to go with that option. So why can't we use the equipment bid as it stands right now, where we're renting the equipment and we can pay for the materials using CoStar's?
So the reason is, the reason is prevailing wage requirements. We can use the equipment bid for projects where the labor, materials, equipment rental, all together are under $100,000. Once we cross the $100,000 threshold, we're out of the equipment bid. We can't use that anymore because that's not a prevailing wages contract. So that's why, once we cross that $100,000 threshold, and that's not just the $100,000 paid to the equipment bid contractor, that's the total price of the contract. Sort of like we just talked about the Zieglerville Road drainage. Part of the reason we can do that with the equipment bid is soup to nuts. We're staying under that $100,000 threshold. But once we cross that threshold, now we've got to go out with a bid project with prevailing wage.
So is that something that's been added new or recently?
No, prevailing wage used to kick in at $25,000 years ago, and maybe the solicitor will have more expertise than I will on this, but years ago, a law was passed that it made an exception for highway projects, that highway projects could go up to $100,000. That's been in place for a number of years. Unfortunately, our legislature doesn't keep ratcheting these numbers up. as inflation and consumer price indexes go up. That's been on the books for quite a number of years, yeah.
Okay, so you didn't give a number. Actually, Chuck pulled the number out for you, the 400 and some odd thousand that he talked about for the total project. And you guys basically agreed to divide that in half, and that's what your costs are, what you're expecting. So you know the figures of the square yardage that needs to be removed and replaced. Okay.
I do, yeah, we want
And
that.
you know, you're used to doing, you know, like a time and material quota on what it would expect for the milling portion of it, what it would expect for the paving, the replacement. So in order for the board to really understand what needs to be done here, they really need to know all those figures. And is there a problem in doing this in phases? I mean, we had talked a couple of years ago about possibly doing some traffic calming on Zieglerville Road. If we did something like that, we would have the possibility of getting grants for it. I mean, I know, you know, the board has been talking about this. I've been living there for 33 years. So I've been told for probably 25 of those 33 years that my road's going to get paved. Good. So if we need to take an extra year to do it, you know, if it's phased that we do from Goshen to 29 or wherever the worst parts are, we do those first. The other thing that you had mentioned, I guess last fall, is that since the board decided to go with the signage and the striping, that when we do our project for the milling and repairs and everything, that whole intersection will be redone correctly so that we don't have that bump anymore. And from what I saw, I didn't go down and walk it or anything, but I didn't see any white lines other than patch markings in that intersection. So it sounds like that whole intersection is being diverted into the second year.
Okay, there's a lot to unpack there, so
Yeah,
let me see
sorry
if I
about
can
that.
do this. The unit prices were for base repair, for mill, top, cold-in-place recycling. Those unit prices were acquired based on recent project bid unit prices. So it was just price per square yard. It's not broken down into equipment and materials because that's not the way that kind of project is bid.
Right.
If we were to piecemeal the project to try and avoid bidding requirements, I'd need the lawyer, because we will get in a lot of trouble doing that. The second-class township code specifically speaks to not doing workarounds to avoid bidding requirements. So I wouldn't recommend that, and I would not be promoting that for that reason. With regard to the intersection, yes, you are correct. We talked about when we top that road, whether we make a profile adjustment, and that would be the time we would do that. So that would be next year, not this year.
Okay. I know Mr. Sachs works for his company works for several other townships. And, you know, I used to do it when I was working, and we've gone out and we've done one road, we've done 10 roads for those townships. You know, when you're putting an equipment bid out there, you're putting that equipment bid out because you don't have the personnel capable or the equipment to do it. So when you're doing it that way, you're saving money when you're able to go ahead and do this. Now, I'm sure if we can ask Mr. Sachs if he can give us some, you know, information based on the equipment bid. This is the first that I've ever heard of it, that it can't go over $100,000, soup to nuts. But I mean, here again, once you get into the prevailing wage, now you're getting less because you're paying more. So, you know, if we have to go another year and spread this out over time to look and see if there's a possibility of getting grants to do traffic calming and incorporate that, then maybe that's the cheaper way to go. So I think, you know, the board needs some more information, except, you know, instead of here we are at the end of March, we got to hurry up, make a decision so that this is guaranteed that it'll be paved by September. You know, I think there's a lot more to it that needs to be looked at. And just so everybody knows, the inlets and stuff were delivered today for the project that you just awarded the proceed earlier, so.
So I work hard to make sure that the recommendations I give the board are consistent with the second-class township code. We have the benefit of a good solicitor to validate that. Again, trying to break this up into tiny pieces to avoid bidding requirements, I feel would be putting us in jeopardy. So I understand you wish we could do it that way. Frankly, I do too. But I don't want to end up in jail or fined.
Oh,
over
I'm
this
not
either.
saying if it's something that can't be done, it can't be done, but I mean, here again, knowing from past experience and, as I said, Mr. Sachs's company or other companies do the same thing. They're out paving, several roads, for townships, every year. So, I mean, he put his equipment bid in, and I don't know what the total was because I couldn't hear last week or 2 weeks ago meeting, but, he has that expectation in there of being able to pave whatever you had in there. So if he had 40 hours worth of paving in there, then, now he's not going to have that if you're going to go ahead and go to this other portion of it. So two more things that I want to bring up. One is however it happens, the millings are worth about $400 a load. So we have plenty of areas in the township that the millings could be used, except we don't have a place to store it. And I know that you had to do a special modification over at Colonial for that riprap to be stored. So I would suggest that the board ask questions about that so that we can figure out how we're going to save some of that material and use that material. So we're not paying $400 a load when we need it. And then the obvious other thing is there's been concerns for years from the lower end down near Diane Jordan's house and Brian Hill's house and coming up about putting the low pressure main in there to service about 18 homes. So are we going to go ahead and do all this repair work and everything else, and then when that project comes up, we're going to dig back through the road again?
So I guess I'll start there. So we just have sewage planning in place at DEP that talks about putting in a low pressure line on Zieglerville Road. And we have a projected schedule for that design work would occur in the next 2 to 3 years, that the township would then begin seeking grant funding for that and hopes to construct in another 10 years. I don't think you want to wait 10 years to base repair that road.
No.
I can't speak for, it's not even Mr. Sachs, it's his company, his sons. There is still equipment bid work being done by this township. It has always been a plan to contract out the Zieglerville Road work because of the size and scope of the work. With regard to millings, you are correct, Mr. Burns, we really don't have a storage location for that. And most contractors at this point are going to take the bulk of those millings back to the plant where they are recycled into the next loads of asphalt. And I anticipate that would mostly be the case here unless the Public Works Department or to specifically request a piece of those be piled somewhere, but I don't know where right now. We have a real storage challenge here at Lower Frederick with materials like that.
And then just one other thing, obviously, will there be a not to exceed number that you're going to give for doing the bid package for if you do put this out to bid?
We put together bid packages for all these projects frequently, and I didn't come in with a number off the top of my head. If the board wants to delay this project until I provide that number, we can do that.
Carol, what does it usually cost you? Just give us a ballpark figure. 5,000, 10,000, 20,000.
There's just preparing the bid documents, and then there's the overall contract administration, so they'd be two different numbers. Just preparing the bid documents is usually under 5,000.
So we can do a not to exceed 5,000. Because that's all we need now, isn't it, just to prepare the bid package?
That's all we need to do.
Okay. So would someone like to make a motion to authorize having our engineer preparing the bid package for the 2024 base repair of Zieglerville Road, not to exceed $5,000. I will make that motion. Do I have a second?
Chuck Yeiser will second.
Thank you. Supervisor Hexter made the motion. Supervisor Yeiser made the second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Carol. I think the next one is yours, too.
So this is a case where we have used the equipment bid type of procedure instead of what we've normally done with the road sealing, which is just put out a contract. So we sent out a request for bid for chip seal equipment and labor. That was awarded last month to Asphalt Maintenance Solutions. The next step is to purchase the stone and the emulsion, which would both be done under CoStar's contracts, and that is what is before you tonight.
Any questions from the board? No? Okay. Is someone prepared to make that motion? And it would be to authorize purchase of stone and emulsion at a cost not to exceed $148,000. The 2024 chip seal project, and further authorize the township manager to sign any paperwork necessary to complete the project.
I'll second.
You'll make the motion.
I'll make the motion. I'm sorry.
It's all right, close enough. Thank you. Do I have a second?
Chuck Yeiser will second.
Supervisor Holter made the motion. Supervisor Yeiser made the second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
All right. Next topic is the Police Department Phase 1 remodeling authorization.
Okay, as the board may recall, we budgeted for female locker room /bathroom for the police department for this year. That amount was $64,274, which was to come out of our COVID relief ARPA fund. At the beginning of the year, Sergeant Cass and myself did a walkthrough with our code inspector, Ryan Westner, to discuss the project. For any bathroom /shower work or movement of plumbing, we would need to have an architect design and then go through the approval process. First, we would need to find one, potentially an RFP for an architect before any design could take place. I would still like to go through this planning for a Phase 2 with a goal to have the design by sometime in the fall. Sergeant Cass and I discussed changing the initial scope, which is what I'm calling this phase. We're calling this Phase 1 to allow us to get the work done sooner and not have to wait for all the planning needed. Phase 1 includes installing non-loading bearing walls in the hallway, squad room, conference room, and most importantly, the locker room. Sergeant Cass and myself did a walkthrough with RJ and Roger of our Public Works Department, which is the plan in front of you tonight. This does all fall under their purview. We would need some electric and HVAC work done along with some moving of some network cabling. That being said, I'm asking the board to authorize up to $12,000 for this project, $4,200 of materials with an additional amount for delivery, and then roughly $7,000 would be for outside contractors to handle the minor electric HVAC work.
So just so I understand this will not actually be installing a new bathroom, shower, locker room, but it will be doing some of the preparatory work to do that in the near future.
So this would be the actual locker room part.
Okay.
So that would be where the current men's locker room is. We would be splitting that into both a male and female. This is also putting a wall in the hallway, because right now anyone who enters the building can have a straight line back into the department. And then also changing the squad room around and conference room to better fit with what the department's looking to do as we move into the future, creating more storage area and stuff. So because these are all essentially non-loading bearing walls. Our guys can do it. We would need to get a permit, but we don't need an architect design for that because we're not moving. The electric work is really, we may have to move a couple of lights, fixtures in the locker room, and then that's the same thing with the HVAC. And then as far as network cabling, we may have to move some of that around as we look to move the squad room where it currently is back to where the emergency management room is. So this would be kind of the preliminary work. And then we can look at, I know Sergeant Cat has talked about they don't have a shower in case they would need one, or if we look to do another bathroom, but once again, we would need architect plans for that, and that's going to be time consuming finding an architect, and it's going to have to be ADA compatible, so it's going to be a little bit, there's going to be much more planning involved in that.
And what about the door? There's currently one doorway, right?
So the front door doesn't change. There will be a steel or a commercial door that'll be in that hallway. That will be the access back to the locker room area. And then there's another door that will be separating what is currently the squad room from the rest of the, we're creating a foyer area, which is what they don't have, which is something they currently don't have now.
Okay, I'm looking at the plan. It looks like there's going to be a door into each side, so that's what I meant. There'll be two doors now into the two different sides rather than one door.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other questions?
Yeah.
Which certainly I understand. If this is something you'd like to table for next weekend or next week, that's.
I'd be happy if you took me downstairs after the meeting and showed me what's going on. I'm sorry, I just can't. Trying to understand the project, and I know what we want to do. But I'm not able to process what's been put in front of me to vote on something at this time.
Okay.
Is the rest of the board okay with pushing this to next week?
Definitely. This is the first time seeing it. I didn't see it before.
Okay.
now. Yeah.
Terry?
Yes.
Okay, so we will hopefully have an opportunity to take a look at this, and we will address this again at our general meeting next week. All right, next item is the Manning property EDU discussion.
Okay, so as the board may recall, we received a request last year regarding 5 EDUs that were freed up during the Manning developments. At that time, they asked the board to consider township purchase the EDUs back, allow them to stop paying quarterly fees on inactive EDUs, but hold them for future development, or turn them back over to the township and not be responsible for the current EDU bill due. And that was as of 1/31/2023. This request actually compelled the township to create the policy for reserved / dormant EDUs adopted in January of this year. We understood during the conversations the Mannings had at least 2 different scenarios where they had inactive EDUs that they had been paying the sewer charge for, and EDUs they had purchased where no sewer charge was ever paid. So the first request, and this was based on the policy section 4.G, which would be for the 6 EDUs purchased back in 2008 at $5,000 per EDU. They are requesting a refund of $24,000 with a 20% admin fee. Since the admin fee is actually 10%, this refund would actually be $27,000 based on the adopted policy. Is there any questions on that request, or moving forward, that would be straight out of the policy?
So these EDUs were purchased 16 years ago to build 6 units?
I can't say how many units, I know they purchased the 6 EDUs.
But they were purchased presumably for something.
Yes,
And so that something didn't happen,
yes,
and now they want to give the EDUs back,
correct.
and they want us to pay them to give them back.
Yes.
So I'm looking for some clarification here. So other people, for example, I'll give an example. We had some people on Cemetery Road who years ago believed the sewer would come up Cemetery Road, and so they purchased EDUs in that eventuality. And then when the sewer did not come up Cemetery Road, they said, or at least one of them said, we want the money back. So how is this the same or different? That is, do they want the EDUs purchased back because something changed in the township so they couldn't build, or do they just change their mind and didn't want to build?
The reason for returning the EDUs does not matter under the policy adopted in January. Policy adopted in January basically says if someone wishes to return unused EDUs, they can. Really, the only question is how much money the township's gonna pay them back for those EDUs. If there is absolute proof that, you know, this is what they paid for those EDUs, and the township says, yep, we agree, that's what you paid for them, that's what they get back minus the 10% fee. The policy does not address as to the reasons why they're being returned or the reasons why they were purchased in the first place. It's really a question of, can they show how much money they paid for them? If they can, that's what they get back. If they can't, it's the default amount, which I believe is $1,500. Once again, minus the 10% administrative.
Okay, so just make one correction, it's minus the 10% admin fee, not plus the 10% admin fee.
Well, yes, when I say.
So that would be 24,000 minus 2,400.
No, 'cause I think they're returning 6 EDUs at 5,000 apiece, so that's 30,000.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, I'm looking at the wrong math. So can they prove that that's what they paid?
Yes.
They can?
Yes.
Okay.
So the 6 that you just mentioned are those related to the 5 originally requested, or are we talking about 2 completely different requests?
That's why I was saying 2 different scenarios. This was the second scenario.
So let's reset that scenario, and let's not talk about the original request for 5. We're talking about 6 right now, or 5?
This is
6, okay.
6, yes.
For Village by the Pond.
And they definitely aren't using.
Yes, that's for, yes.
Okay.
Or, no, they're not using them.
So our policy states that they get back what they paid minus 10%, 27,000. Okay,
Yes.
that's what the policy says.
So if in the future they decide to build, they'd have to pay today's EDU rate?
Correct.
Okay.
And the exact address that those were purchased for? Because doesn't our policy, it's by the parcel. So do we know what those 6 were purchased for? The check was Village by the Pond 1202, but I know there's several properties in that area. So just to make sure that these 6 that we are refunding, the purchase minus 10% is for that address. We don't know what it is.
It was for Village by the Pond, I don't.
Okay.
So in other words, you're saying the bookkeeping that the township kept does not allow you to take those EDUs and assign them to a parcel? You're right if you say no.
No. Or I should say they weren't assigned. It was It was additional EDUs purchased that were not used in whatever they, well, I don't want to be presumptuous, but I assume there was they had future plans for them.
Right.
Also understanding it, from what I understand, the plant was getting close to capacity.
Would it make sense to ask Mr. Manning what these are for? I don't want to put you on the spot, but if you want to add some clarification.
So my name's Eric Manning. I'm from 1202. That is what we're talking about right now. That area there, we call it Village by the Pond. It is made up of probably.
Sorry, is your microphone on? There should be a green light.
Yes.
Thank you.
That area is made up of 3 or so parcels, and that whole area we consider it being Village by the Pond. It was in here for land development for numerous years. At this present time, we're not going to go forward with that land development. Those EDUs were purchased back at a time when you didn't have EDUs. So we were asked to, not asked, but we were told if we wanted to do anything in the future, we needed to purchase the EDUs right then. That's why we did. I'll stay up here because the next one will be worse.
Should we split these into 2 when we make our decision? Yes. So let's just consider the first one for now. I'm fine with the request. Anyone else?
It follows the policy that we set, so.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're just going to address these one at a time. So would someone like to make a motion to refund, what is it? To refund 6 EDUs purchased at $5,000 per EDU minus an admin fee of 10% for a total of $27,000 to you or to the trust?
Okay, so you're talking about 2 different things again. So the one you're talking about right now has nothing to do with the trust.
So it's
It
to
is Village
This
by
one
the
is for
Pond.
Village.
to Village by the Pond. Thank you. Okay, do I have a motion?
Also move.
Thank you. Do I have a second? All right, so Supervisor Halter made the motion, Supervisor Byrd made the second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Okay, so we have approval on the first matter,
Thank you.
which is the 6 EDUs. Okay, now let's go to the second one,
Do you want me to discuss it or?
please.
All right, so the second one is a little more complicated. Started back in 2008 when the CVS was built. The CVS was put on 2 different properties, one of which is owned by my mother's trust, which is Marion J. Manning. The other one is owned by my father's trust, which is Alfred E. Manning. So when the CVS was done, those 2 properties basically were subdivided off in the front. It had a total of 2 EDUs at that present time, or I'm sorry, 7 EDUs, 2 of which went with the development of the CVS. The others, for whatever reason, the township applied them to Two Big Road, which is my mother's trust, which is 1.6 acres. At the time, we didn't think there was any problem with that. We were actually under the assumption that they could be used within anything of the Manning partnerships, and there was no reason to question that. After sitting here listening to all the meetings that I did previously, I can tell you now that you would not allow those to be transferred to any other Manning parcel. So the fact that the township decided to put them on the 1.6 acre property, I'm not really sure why, but we paid for them for 14 years with the assumption that we were going to be able to use them on whatever we were developing at the time. Obviously, we're not going to do any further development at this point in time. We know that we would have to purchase new ones if we did. So we're asking for possibility of reimbursement of some of that money that we paid out, which was the tune of $39,000. in fees for services that were not rendered. Municipal code, from what I remember, is 60% that you're allowed to charge for a dormant EDU. In your policy, you have decided to charge 25.
Sorry, sir, you're referring to the policy we just enacted
Correct.
recently.
That's correct.
So I don't think that would go back. That
Maybe
would
it will,
only,
maybe it won't.
that would, okay.
We can ask the question.
Do you have anything to add, Peter?
Sorry. Did you ever attempt to use these EDUs somewhere and the township said, no, you can't?
Nope.
No, you just kept them on your mother's trust property, you know, but you never got around, you never put forward a development where they could be used. It's,
We never got that far. Right?
okay,
They were part of what was going to be used for the further development of the property, along with the 6 that we purchased. And these would have been used for the other buildings that would be built
right,
on the property.
okay. You know, what's happening here is they are making a request, which is not covered by the policy. That doesn't mean the township can't consider the request and grant it, deny it, grant part of it. That's why when the request was made, you know, I did tell Jason, you know, it's something that should go before the board for you guys to consider. But refunding past payments made is not something that the policy, you know, considers in any way, shape, or form. And generally speaking, policies are not, are only prospective. They move forward, they don't look backwards.
So what is the value, excuse me, what is the value of the EDUs minus?
So the value
The
of
rental
EDUs,
payments.
we don't have paperwork to prove what was paid. But when the Zieglerville expansion was done, so that Zieglerville didn't have sewer past, somebody here may be able to tell me, I don't know. But it was done in my lifetime. And when that was done, it was a $1,500 fee. That's kind of what the township has come up with. So that's what the $1,500 part of that is the reimbursement of that. Now, your new thing that was passed, just to bring to your attention, I know what your intention was, but what it actually reads is something different. The 10% administration fee is applied when you can prove what that amount is. But based on what was written here, if you can't prove it, then it's just a set $1,500. Now, I know that wasn't your intention, but that's the way it's written, so that's just the way we did that in that.
So I think we have to rely on our solicitor to give us a
I understand the
determination on
intention,
that.
but
None of
if
us
he
are
reads
lawyers
it-
up here.
right,
Yeah.
If he reads it, he'll see why we wrote what we did.
So what I'm hearing from our solicitor is, based on our policy, we can refund the EDUs at $1,500 each. You're going to check on this admin fee situation, but the policy does not cover the rental fees. So
I
that would-
understand that. We're
okay.
basically, all we're saying is, when we were here, we heard something that there's a municipal code that all these years you guys have, now, here again, when that municipal code was put into effect, I don't know, but he had mentioned that you were only ever allowed to charge up to 60%. So, in my opinion, you mischarged 40% throughout that time. Now, don't know when that was put into effect, don't know when that municipal code was in effect. Obviously, we've been paying since 2008.
So we have two questions here. One of them is, does the admin fee of 10% apply in this case?
It's a policy, so yes, he's correct. the policy as it's written is unclear whether or not it applies here. That being said, this is not like a law where we're stuck with it. My interpretation is obviously we intended the 10% to apply across the board. And, you know, if you do decide to grant this refund, you certainly can apply the 10%. Mr. Manning is correct that the Municipalities Authorities Act, or Municipal Authorities Act, does have a limit on dormant fees as to 60%. Whether or not that 60% applied to the fees that were charged to Mr. Manning, I don't know. I don't know how those fees were classified. I don't know how those fees were assessed, why they were assessed. So while the law does say that, I don't know if the law is applicable in this particular instance.
Do you have a recommendation?
Well, certainly, at a minimum, we should refund him the $7,500 minus the 10%. Whether or not you want to refund any part of the rental charges charged to him, that's really a policy decision. It's not a legal decision at this point in time. You could, there's a variety of ways you could, do that. There's the proposal that they make where I think they're asking for
It was based on
Yeah.
your current policy that
yeah,
says
they're,
25%.
they're basically asking a refund of everything charged to them, and then they pay everything back in accordance with the policy, as if the policy was in place from the time they bought the EDUs. You could do it that way. You could do it in that we refund 40% of the charges to arguably bring in compliance with the 60% requirement of the Municipal Authorities Act. Or you can pick a different number that you think is fair. Or you can say, no, we're not retroactively applying this policy. We're only moving it forward, in which case it's just the 7,500 minus the 10% fee.
So one of the things that I heard you mention at the beginning was the policy says it has to stay to that address, which I think you're saying that little slice of land, the 1.6 acres, but you also own the larger tract beside it, correct? I mean,
Yes.
I'm not certain, but I was thinking that if it's owned by a collection of properties like that, it would be able to be transferred? So if that would change
the properties
anything?
are owned by my mother's trust and my
Got it.
father's trust.
Okay. I mean, I could personally think that that's more of something we should be discussing, since it's the Manning, I understand legal differences, but.
The fact here today, though, is
Yeah.
we're not planning on building anything
Okay.
on it, so.
Okay. I just want to make sure it didn't
asking
change
for
anything for
whatever the
you.
board will do at this point in time. Obviously, if we want to build something in there in the future, EDUs have to be purchased.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, again, thanks for coming and explaining this. We did just get this information this afternoon, so I'm not, there's a lot going on. So for me personally, would like to understand and work with our solicitor a little bit more. And in the near future, get a decision. That's just me.
No problem.
So you're saying you're not ready to make a decision? Not really. Okay.
Yeah, I would like to suggest that we table this to get a little bit more information so that whatever decision we make is actually fair, not only to Mr. Manning, but to the township as well.
And the other thing that we'll have to consider is if this is setting a precedent, because we do have other folks in the township who are in the same situation. And until recently, everyone is expected to continue paying because that's how it was set up. We're saying since 2008, none of us were on the board in 2008, so it is hard to change things. We just changed this this year or last year. And to go back 16 years and make it right is going to require, I think, a little more pondering to see if what would be fair.
I will say, just in terms of thinking, up until that new plant came online, if you didn't pay those quarterly charges, you'd lose it. Because we didn't have capacity and somebody else would get it. So, you know, if you're gonna wind the clock back, you know, maybe you wanna wind it back till the plant came online. But prior to that, I mean, people were buying because we didn't have capacity, and you wanted to have the ability to bill when that happened. And you took a risk, as did a lot of other people, and that's part of life. So we can talk about it more at a subsequent meeting, but I think winding the clock back 16 years is not the right way to look at this. Winding the clock back maybe to when we had capacity is, you know, maybe a different way of looking at it. That's just my feeling. And there were a lot of people in the township who took a chance and bought those EDUs. And it's just the way it was. So it's just my thinking on the thing.
Yeah, we understand, and we're not necessarily, we're not saying that it was anyone's fault. You know, part of it, my parents and my father's up there in years, you know, and those bills were just paid every year, and nobody really thought about it much. Then when my sister and I started to take things over, started to look into things, ask questions, things started to become apparent. So I do think that the Manning family has had an impact to this township, and this is money that was paid out with no services rendered. So that's all I'm asking for. It seems as though there's a municipal code that was put into effect that understands that townships should take consideration on situations like this and only charge a certain amount of money based on that because there's no services rendered. So all we're asking for is some thought. And we're like everybody else. We paid the money out. We'll see what we can get. That's all. We're not going to argue. We're not going to get a lawyer. We're just asking a question.
Okay.
Thank you for coming in, and I don't know when we'll address this again. It might be next week, it might be at the April work session. So I'm not going to make a commitment now, but Jason, will you? Yeah, he'll let you know. It's not going to be too far in the future, though. All right, thank you. All right. Oh, go ahead, Dan.
Your microphones, when you guys speak at the very end, there's really high-pitched noise that comes off of almost all your microphones. Grating. Oh, you can't hear, so I shouldn't talk to you. But there is a high-pitched noise that comes off.
That does not need to go in the minutes. Well, we can't please everybody, but we're trying. All right, the next item is to authorize letters to the county regarding 2 county bridges, Old Gravel Pike and Sunrise Mill. Do you want to take that, Jason?
Hey, Jason, can I just jump in before we go too far with this one? So the Sunrise Mill Bridge isn't in our township, so maybe that'll make life easier on that one.
Oh, as far as the request, or?
Yeah. It's a couple hundred feet in
know.
Upper Frederick.
Yes, very close. So at the board's March 5th meeting, the 5th or 6th meeting, I was directed to draft 2 letters I assume it's to the county commissioners. I think we're heading to the top for this. It started with the conversation with Old Gravel Pike Bridge, and then I think it was, understanding the Sunrise Mill Bridge has also been closed. So what you have in front of you is 2 draft copies that I drafted for your consideration.
My understanding is one of the objections to the easy access for the old gravel pike bridge was concerns about people parking cars. But with that barrier there, even if it's opened up a tiny bit just for foot traffic, we still would not have any issue with cars parking. So I just wonder if something to that effect could be added in there. You know, to provide access to foot traffic and continue to disallow parking. Just so they're aware, we acknowledge that this would not allow cars to park there, just to allow the foot traffic. I don't know how you,
I do have that in the fourth pair or third pair where it says, we understand there may be logistical safety considerations to address before allowing foot traffic on the bridge. However, we were prepared, you know, that was where we are prepared to work collaboratively with the county to develop any necessary protocols or precautions. Is that not enough?
I would just specifically mention that we are not, we have no expectation to allow cars to park there.
Is the concern with the county about parking, or is that another, is it?
It was more than that in the letter. It was liability. There was a couple things there. Am I correct, Jason?
Yes, it was parking. I think there was previous trash dumping. And then
That's
just,
why the guardrail was put up, but the reason why they have it closed is because of the liability and parking over by that guy's barn that has no way to turn around. He's complained so much.
yes,
Which is why I am specifically requesting that we acknowledge in this letter, we are not requesting alterations that would allow cars to park. We are just asking to allow the foot traffic.
So you could just append that sentence where it says, and necessary protocols or precautions to ensure the safety of pedestrians and not allow parking. How does that work? Is that an easy modification?
Or, and continue to not allow parking, just something like that, yeah. Because I think, since that was mentioned in their response to us, I think we need to respond to that issue. Or, you know, parking of, let's say parking of vehicles, to be even more clear.
Does that apply specifically to the north side?
Well, that's why they put the guardrail up. The guardrail is put up to not allow parked cars. And I think what we are looking for is to allow foot traffic to utilize that bridge. So if someone is biking or riding, to allow them to go across the bridge, they would not have a car.
You didn't understand my question.
Warren.
Can you define north when you,
I don't mind coming up to the microphone. I didn't think it was going to be that complicated. The north side of the bridge has people living there, houses, people that don't want to have cars turning around in their driveway or parking. The south side of the bridge has room to park. So I'm wondering if you're specifying the north side of the bridge when you
Thank you.
talk about no parking.
Well, the guardrail was put up there, so my assumption is the guardrail was put there to not allow the parking. Nothing was put on the other side of the bridge. Go ahead, Dan.
Dan Orff, Kratz Road. The road, Old Gravel Pike Road is the township's road. So I think would we not be within our rights to mark that put up a sign saying, local traffic only, not a through street, all those kind of things. No parking except for resident. I mean, I think we as the township, don't we have the right to regulate a road like that on our own without having to go to the county for that part?
If it's our road, we can control the parking. If it's a PennDOT road, it's more complicated. Actually, I think on PennDOT roads, we can also control parking as long as we get their A-OK on it. But if this is a township road, it's entirely up to us.
Does the board have any other additions or modifications proposed for this letter?
We're in agreement to add the parking, right?
Yes. Yeah, the issue of, to not allow parking of vehicles on the north side. Terry, you okay with that?
That's fine.
Okay. Go ahead, Phil.
When you said on the north side or on either side?
You should build on both sides.
Yeah, that's where I thought, that's where I was thinking we were talking about.
Well, we can't legally tell people they can't park. The objection is to the turnaround in driveways. If it's a public road, can we legally tell people they can't park on the other side?
On the Delphi side, all they need to do is open up a little bit of that guardrail so that people can walk through.
Exactly.
But that still will prohibit a car from parking there because that guardrail is pretty much on the road, so they would be blocking the road if they parked there.
Yes, that would be a problem.
Yeah.
Phil Smith, 205 Gerloff. Would it be possible to read the text to the public, this letter? Or in draft form, is that not possible?
Zoom it up. You want to read it more?
I'll go ahead and start reading it. It's a request to open Old Gravel Pike Bridge. Actually, maybe we should say request to open Old Gravel Pike Bridge to pedestrian traffic. Let's change that subject line too, so that's clear. Dear Montgomery County Commissioners, on behalf of the Board of Supervisors of Lower Frederick Township, I am writing to request the opening of the recently renovated Old Gravel Bridge. I should say Old Gravel Pike Bridge to foot traffic. We understand there may not be an immediate plan for a trail leading to the bridge, particularly considering the potential timeline for implementing the Sunrise Trail. However, we do strongly feel allowing residents to access the bridge on foot would be a valuable interim measure to our community that would go a long way. The recent renovation of the Old Gravel Pike Bridge located in Lower Frederick Township represents a significant investment in our community. Opening the bridge to foot traffic would provide our community members with the opportunity to appreciate the beauty of the surrounding area with breathtaking photo opportunities during a peaceful stroll over the Swamp Creek. It would also serve as a symbolic gesture of progress and inclusivity, demonstrating our commitment to enhancing the quality of life for all residents of Lower Frederick Township. We understand there may be logistical and safety considerations to address before allowing foot traffic on the bridge. However, we are prepared to work collaboratively with Montgomery County to develop any necessary protocols or precautions to ensure the safety of pedestrians and not allow parking of vehicles. In conclusion, we respectfully request your support in opening the Old Gravel Pike Bridge to foot traffic, even in the absence of an immediate trail connection. We believe that this small step would have a positive impact on our community and demonstrate our shared commitment to enhancing the well-being of our residents. Thank you for your attention to this matter. We look forward to your favorable response.
I would just comment, you might want to add under read MC 101. That's the county bridge.
Right.
Okay, did you get that? MC, okay. Yeah. I mean, we could also put in here somewhere that, you know, our tax dollars help pay for this, but maybe that's a bit too much.
Yeah, did a nice job.
It's good. Any other comments from the board? Are we ready to? Do we need to vote on this, or, sorry, Jason and Peter, do you need to vote on this or just consensus to send it forward? Just consensus? Okay, you've got my approval.
Same here.
Same.
Same here.
Okay, so that's on this letter. You want to look at the second one?
Well,
Sorry.
it's not in our township.
I don't know.
But we use it.
I mean, it's not in our township.
Our
but
residents
it's
use
still
it.
close enough. Like, could it hurt?
We
Yeah.
touch the upper edge. That part of Greeby is,
Okay,
because we've got Greeby up to that first house on Greeby.
all right. Second letter is request to open Sunrise Mill Bridge. Is there a number for that too? Okay. Dear Montgomery County Commissioners, on behalf of the Board of Supervisors of Lower Frederick Township, I am writing to express our community's ardent desire to see the opening of the Sunshine Mill Bridge and Short Trail in Upper Frederick Township. While we understand that the implementation of the Sunrise Trail may be a long-term project, we believe that allowing residents to access and enjoy the bridge and its scenic surroundings would provide immediate benefits to our community. The Sunrise Mill Bridge holds historical significance and serves as a beloved landmark for many residents, offering breathtaking photo opportunities and a connection with nature. Despite the absence of a formal trail leading to the bridge at present, we believe that granting access to the area would foster a sense of community and provide residents with a safe and enjoyable space to explore. Additionally, it would encourage outdoor activity and promote wellness among residents, contributing to the overall quality of life in our township and surrounding areas. We acknowledge the complexities involved in implementing the Sunrise Trail and the associated infrastructure improvements. However, we urge you to consider interim measures that would allow residents to access the Sunrise Mill Bridge while plans for the trail are being developed and implemented. Thank you for your attention to this matter. We eagerly anticipate your favorable response and the opportunity to work together to make the Sunrise Mill Bridge and its surrounding area accessible to our residents once again. Good job.
I do just have to add that the breathtaking photo opportunities was my wife's verbiage.
Okay,
in case she
so-
tries to take credit.
Give her credit for that. Any comments from the board? Any edits, additions?
I mean, as I understand it, the reason why it was open, or at least it wasn't posted as not being open for a while after the restoration was complete. And now they've sort of closed the whole area because they're doing some construction up near the house and the mill. And that, at least according to Andrew, has been the reason that he's given me that they closed that site. I don't know how long that construction is going to take and whether or not they would plan on reopening that bridge once they're done with their construction or whatever they're doing. But that was the reason that he gave me, Andrew Lang, in terms of why that bridge was closed, or that area was closed, is because they're doing some construction and earth moving.
So I'm not hearing any proposed edits to this.
I mean, do you want me to reach out like I did with the old gravel pike bridge and get a formal?
I
Or-
think so. I think we should hold off on sending this letter until we understand.
You want to get a status from the
Yeah.
county? Okay.
Is that okay with the rest of the board? We'll delay sending the Sunrise Mill Bridge letter pending further details?
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Phil has the same.
Okay, go ahead, Phil.
Phil Smith, 205 Gerloff. Last week I had a chance to attend the Parks, Trails, and Historic Sites Advisory Board where that bridge and the facility at Sunrise Mill was discussed. So I can just add that they are going out to bid on the restoration of the mill, and they're discussing how to get the site opened in the near future, at least on a reduced scale from their overall planning, but they are hoping to do that in well, as near a future point as they can possibly make it. So I think you'd be well served holding back on making a recommendation at this time for that bridge, because they're looking at the bridge as being part of a bigger package. And, that package would include the mill building and the associated structures as a historic resource. And I think that if you try to, separate that, you wouldn't be well served, is, I guess, my point. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, Dan Orff, Kratz Road, just real quick. Did you, in your letter about the old gravel pike bridge, did you have wording in there? I know you just read it about willingness to collaborate with them in any method possible to make it go through. Okay, I just couldn't remember that. If you hadn't said it, I was going to recommend you do that.
Yes, we're prepared to work collaboratively. Just that word. Thank you.
Yeah, the only thing I would, just giving a plug for the Sunrise Mill Bridge, since I'm probably a big user or was a big user of it because it's very close to where I live and it's right on the edge of the township. But people do walk on Greeby Road, and that is a very viable, just as much or more viable right now than the old gravel pipe bridge affords, a viable way of getting over from Greeby Road over to Swamp Creek Road. And it's a beautiful walk in either way you go. We walk over near Ross Meyer's place all the time without really having to get on Knifer Road. And I go on Knifer Road, I run on Knifer Road, walk on Knifer Road, I jump off of Knifer Road. So it is a really, really nice way to get from A to B without having to get on Knifer Road.
All right, that brings us to the end of our business section. We are now in public comment. Is there any public comment? Anyone on Zoom? That looks like a no. Okay, that brings us to supervisor comment. Looking over here. No? No supervisor comment. All right, meeting's adjourned.
Before we adjourn, you might want to announce that we're going into exec session for
Oh,
labor matters.
okay, so we are going into executive session right now. Now can I?
For personnel matters?
For personnel matter.
And we don't intend to reopen the meeting?
No, we are not
afterwards?
we're not, so I'm not adjourning?
You are adjourning. I just
Now I
want
can adjourn the meeting?
Yes.
Okay, now I'm adjourning the meeting.